So I'm going to go ahead and just congratulate myself because I finished the Freedom School's first 100 great books. I made a list of 100 greatest books ever written. And I actually even expanded it to greatest works ever made. So, and I even added 34 on top of it all. So when I was developing the list, I was like sort of overthrowing some of my own ideas. I started out with a number one book being a woman, right? There's explanations for all my ideas. The one that came to mind, which is easy to remember, which is always the best way to discuss ideas. But the woman, right? You could be read like a book or something. So, I could read you like a book. So to say a person isn't a bundle of ideas, all a book is really just a bundle of ideas, and a person is a bundle of ideas. In fact, whenever I listed any book or movie or screenplay or website, well, for the most part, the Constitution is kind of written by nobody because it's written by everybody. But I always put the author's name because the person, every piece of culture that's created came from a person. So, there is a person that could take the credit for the idea. Also, the a person is encapsulates a whole bunch of ideas. So whereas I would put some great authors, I wouldn't put all their great works. I think you should read a ton of MLK. You should read a ton of Malcolm X, Noam Chomsky, and I only listed either a few of their works or just one of their works as a introduction, because that was the sort of contradiction that I was struggling in between, was that this is the first list, so I don't want to alienate people who haven't read, all that I've read and have the same sort of, ethical foundations as me, or worldview as me, let's say. So I put popular ideas next to, hardcore, solid, sort of should always be in a canon of forever books, right? 100 books, or 100 works, forever works for end of all time. That'd be my 2016 project. Okay, so that'll be my focus for when I get the 2016 list developed, and I'll explain when I go through the list, which I'm going to talk a little bit now because I figured it would best I could talk about this now and it would work out for the best because I just thought about the idea, so it would be fresh on my mind. This is actually lesson number one. Lesson number one: Che Guevara. Che Guevara is a person that you should read. I've recommended two things. He wrote a book detailing the Cuban Revolutionary War. I think that would be a good book to always read. It should be a part of the canon. And then also this speech here, which I believe, I'm not for sure who it says, to the Tricontinental. I remember him giving a speech to the United Nations too. I'm feeling like it's like a United Nations type speech, but I'm not for sure where he actually gave this speech from. But anyways, this is a way for us to learn about ourselves, okay? And Marxists, actually, there's actually a lot of Karl Marx inspired authors or great work creators that I had listed. Anyways, let's go with Che Guevara, right? This is the ending of his speech. Let us sum up our hopes for victory. Total destruction of imperialism by eliminating its final bulwark, the oppression exercised by the United States of America, to carry out as a tactical method the people's gradual liberation, one by one or in groups, driving the enemy into a difficult fight away from its own territory, dismantling all its sustenance bases, that is, its dependent territories. This means a long war, and once more we repeated, a cruel war. Let no one fool himself at the outstart, and let no one hesitate to start out for fear of the consequences it may bring to his people. It is almost our sole hope for victory. We cannot elude the call at this hour. Vietnam is pointing it out with its endless lesson of heroism, its tragic and everyday lesson of struggle and death for the attainment of final victory. There the imperialist soldiers endure the discomforts of those who, used to enjoying the U.S. standard of living, have to live in a hostile land with the insecurity of being unable to move without being aware of walking on enemy territory. Death to those who dare take a step out of their fortified encampment. The permanent hostility of the entire population. All this has internal repercussions in the United States. propitiates, propitiates, I don't know, the resurgence of an element which is being minimized in spite of its vigor by all imperialist forces, class struggle even within its own territory. How close we look, how close we could look into a bright future should 2, 3, or many Vietnams flourish throughout the world with their share of deaths and their immense tragedies. 4 million people in Vietnam died. 4 million. So, and they were a peasant poor country that had stopped the United States, which Nixon is the one that pulled out of the Vietnam War. And so he's saying that this whole speech was about Korea and Vietnam, and then this is what he is, I guess, telling whoever he's talking to the strategy for how we're going to get ultimate victory. Che Guevara is speaking. Okay, so how close could we look into a bright future should 2, 3, or many Vietnams flourish throughout the world with their share of deaths and their immense tragedies, with their everyday heroism and the repeated blows against imperialism impelled to disperse its forces under the sudden attack and the increasing hatred of all peoples of the world? If we were all capable of uniting to make our blows stronger and infallible, and so increase the effectiveness of all kinds of support given to the struggling people, how great and close would that future be? If we, in a small point of the world map, are able to fulfill our duty and place at the disposal of this struggle whatever little of ourselves we are permitted to give, our lives, our sacrifice, and if someday we have to breathe our last breath on any land already ours, sprinkled with our blood, let it be known that we have measured the scope of our actions and that we only consider ourselves elements in the great army of the proletariat, but that we are proud of having learned from the Cuban Revolution and from its maximum leader the great lesson emanating from his attitude in this part of the world. What do the dangers or the sacrifices of a man or of a nation matter when the destiny of humanity is at stake? Our every action is a battle cry against imperialism and a battle hymn for the people's unity against the great enemy of mankind, the USA. Wow. Whatever death may surprise us, let it be welcome, provided that this, our battle cry, may have reached some receptive ear, and another hand may be extended to wield our weapons, and other men be ready to intone the funeral dirge with the staccato singing of the machine guns and new battle cries of war and victory. So this was Message to the Tri-Continental, the Che Guevara Internet Archive. So I don't know anything about this speech, where it came from. It's pretty intense there at the end. That's an introduction to Che Guevara, right? He was an intense man. He was probably the last known revolutionary. He's going to be the last, because the end of history, right? Francis Fukuyama said it's the end of history. And therefore armed conflict is no longer necessary. Democratic, social democracies, liberal, neoliberal democracies have won. So capitalistic democracies, capitalistic countries with elections. That's the that's the neoliberal Washington consensus, right? That's what Washington has decided for the entire world. The New World Order is the Washington consensus, because we're the empire, and the empire says, message to the Tricontinental, to the Russian revolutionary. Oh no, 1967. So he was quoted as, being, his quote was in 1967. I'm trying to find when he actually said when this meeting actually took place. Because that's the whole point, that's the whole point. When you start studying things that you're interested in, you begin to read more things. Che Guevara, being that he is the revolutionary that he is, he has so many great quotes that we all can learn from. Che Guevara, he said that the people must liberate themselves. You cannot liberate a people, they must liberate themselves. So there's no such thing as a liberator. Oh, Che Guevara's here, we're going to have freedom. No, that's not how it works. He's going to come in here and say, hey, y'all need to stand up for yourselves, start organizing, start talking to each other, and make your lives better. And then he'll walk away, and that'll be it. That's he's the messenger, I guess, for liberation, but he's not the people's liberator. The people are the people's liberator. The people themselves are the people's liberator. So I'm not seeing much here. I took a half a second to look at this, and I'm not seeing much. The message to the Tricontinental, 1967. Message to the Tricontinental, spring of 1967. He says create 2-3 mini Vietnam. So essentially have the endurance. You know, it's actually, I can understand a Vietnamese perspective because they're fighting a colonial empire. That's what the Americans had fought, right? They fought the British. The British were occupying our country, and we overthrew them, and we developed our own country. Same thing for Vietnam. They had a Declaration of Independence. They had, you know, their Revolutionary War. Then they have their constitutions, and now they have their government for today, right? I think there's a South Vietnam still. So America got a piece of South Vietnam, and North Vietnam gets to carry on, you know, doing their thing, doing the thing. Anyways, the October 9th marks the 29th anniversary of the death of Ernesto Che Guevara at the hands of a Bolivian army in a CIA organized operation. Whatever, I'm trying to find out where he made this speech at. So below are the excerpts from Guevara's, this is saying a different date, message to the Tricontinental, which he wrote in Cuba in 1966 before leaving for Bolivia. The message was addressed to the newly formed Organization of Solidarity with the Peoples of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Is that the OAS? I don't know. It was published in April 1967 in the organization's magazine Tricontinental under Guevara's title, Create 2-3 Mini Vietnams. That is the watchword. The articles include Che Guevara and the Cuban Revolution and the collection of speeches. Okay, so that's the message to the Tricontinental. He wrote it in Cuba in 1966 before he went to Bolivia. Bolivia is where he's going to get killed, where he's going to meet his ultimate demise. And look at Bolivia today. He had assumed that the people would have rose up to him, but unfortunately there was a lot of resistance to him when he got there. But that is not saying that there weren't people in that country fighting for freedom. If you look at it today, they wind up getting... they had land reform in 1952, and now they got, you know, even more land reform. They elected they elected a socialist leader, a Native American. You know, 95% of Bolivian are Native Americans anyway, so they was actually to elect one of their own, and the first indigenous president of, you know, the Americas, and his name, the president of Bolivia, is Evo Morales. So Evo Morales was finally elected, right? And so he's a socialist leader. America is known for intervening and executing socialist leaders, but he's allowed to live. Hugo Chavez was allowed to live. You know, there's several of these progressive presidents in Latin America who's allowed to live, right? The CIA doesn't want to, I guess, do their dirty business. They did it in Honduras, I'm pretty sure, and they did it in Haiti several times, so I'm not sure what held them up. Maybe international eyes, maybe Barack Obama, right? He has scaled back us attacking anybody and everybody, so good for him. I put the book that Hugo Chavez handed to Barack Obama when they had some sort of meeting together, and it was Eduardo Galeano's Open Veins in Latin America, 5 centuries of I don't know, domination or genocide and exploit of a continent. So that was one of the great works ever created. It could bring, you know, both Barack Obama and Hugo Chavez together in one, you know, nice moment. Here's a book for you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Peace. Hugo Chavez says that his land reform ideas actually came from Abraham Lincoln, who Karl Marx loved. So that was Che Guevara, Message to the Tricontinental. Gives you an idea of who he was. Now is the time of the furnaces, and only light should be seen. Jose Marte. 21 years have already elapsed since the end of the last world conflagration. Numerous publications in every possible language celebrate this event, symbolized by the defeat of Japan. There's a climate of apparent optimism in many areas of the different camps into which the world is divided. 21 years without a world war in these times of maximum confrontations. So you can read the full thing there of that. So that's Che Guevara. Che Guevara is a revolutionary, probably the last violent revolutionary of the world. It forever emblazoned into the symbol, you know, the very, I don't know if he would be against it or for it, but the symbols that a lot of hipsters wear. They'll wear the t-shirt. Stephen Colbert went around dressed as Che Guevara at the, you know, at the Occupy meetings. So, the 100 greatest works humanity has ever made. Okay, this is basically my 100 my 100 great books list, okay? I read about Mortimer Adler. He's a fucking racist piece of shit. He's a white supremacist asshole. So I didn't like what I liked the initial idea, making a list of 100, great books, and that being the cornerstone to. He's trying to defend fucking Western civilization. Gandhi says maybe Western civilization could try it for once. Western civilization. What is that? That's an oxymoron. That ain't even true. So instead of just taking the best ideas that white people in Egypt, somehow Egypt gets thrown into the study of Western civilization. But the greatest ideas that just the West has had, let's make it widen our breadth of understanding about the world. So this is the greatest ideas of the world. Okay, and I was partial to scientific advances, mathematics, scientific advances. I even put a couple inventions in, which maybe I should put their inventor or something else, because every idea, came from a human being. So there is a person who gets credit for a transistor, for a combustible engine, for great inventions. For any type of culture that's actually created, somebody did that, right? Somebody made that, and therefore give credit where credit's due. So I'm just going to talk about the top 10 of the 100 greatest works that I came up with, and then just kind of comment on the rest of it, and then that'll be it. These are just my sort of initial thoughts. When I was making the top 10 list, I was sitting there, I kept on putting, I would be like, oh, that's a great idea, and I would push it up, and I would have this weird-ass battle where I was kind of competing with all these different ideas to put it in the top 10 list. And I had many competing ideas, and I had different conversations with every one of them. So I put a lot of emphasis in the top 10. And when I pushed all those ideas up, you would assume in the list of 134 that most of the ideas on the top part of the list are better ideas than the ones on the bottom. I can't say that is specifically so, because I didn't go through all 134 and say which ones was better than the other ones. But in general, I would say the ones at the top are better than the ones on the bottom, but they're all great works. So don't hate on some of them. You want to just make it 100, right? If you want a list of 100, then just cut it off at 100. 1 through 100, just cut it off. 34 doesn't even matter. Fine. All right, you got me. I didn't make just 100. And they're not all books. You could probably just take off the non-books, and you'll have a different type of list too. But regardless, the 134 books, they're all good in their own right. When you cut it at 100, there's so many good books that I believe I would have kept in the 100. And so you would be doing a disservice, especially to John Oliver. He's right there underneath of it. The Daily Show gets in, but not John Oliver. The Dr. Seuss's Wacky Wednesday gets in, but not John Oliver. I think he might be mad, so you got to send him an apology letter if you do something like that. But so here's the top 134 greatest works, with my prejudice leaning towards books, but also rebelling against my own parameters of just picking only a book. Really, any medium that has ideas could be shared. I also wanted to have an emphasis to other things that our senses could pick up. Maybe we could do a different type of voting scheme later, where we just vote for the best sound, best most beautiful sight or thing to see, best smell, best taste, and softest touch or greatest touch or whatever. What other type of touch would be good? I guess not soft touch, but maybe firm touch. Because even with say something that you taste, pumpkin pie is delicious, and maybe some people say that it isn't. Maybe some people don't like pumpkin pie. And you can't really argue taste too much. Oh, you do like it. Yes, you do. I know you love it. If somebody doesn't like something, you pretty much just have to accept that. I don't like that. Okay, you don't like it. You can't say, well, you don't like it. It's hot, steamy, spicy, fortified with calcium, or whatever type of arguments you can make. But maybe, I don't know, to value that stuff. But my point is, they all can be made into a book. You could write down, the sensations that tasting pumpkin pie actually gives you, and therefore it can be made into some type of book, maybe a website or description of it. Texture of things is put in there, so you can write a book down. A movie has a screenplay to it. So there's, if you think of all these ideas as sort of packages of ideas, a book is a package of ideas, and it seems like pretty much everything else is a package of ideas too, except for like an individual item. I have some websites on here. So the website, say crack.com, it was created by whoever it was created by. They got the HTML code, so it's a website that's on the internet, which is a pretty complicated system that's available for the public to educate themselves and Google whatever they want to Google to their heart's delight. um, and so all items are just like a package of ideas, because a book is just a package of ideas. And there's some ideas that the Mortimer Adler had ignored, such as vocation, and that's why I wanted to move Booker T. Washington's book as high as I could. I was going to put his Up from Slavery, which is his autobiography, but eventually he is mostly known for, and what I was respecting him for was him being synonymous with vocation. He says that true education is when you are building skills, that which you could get paid for. Learn to build a house, learn to trade, learn how to weld, learn how to drive, learn how to speak another language, learn a trade, so that way you will be of some use to somebody in society. That is how, that's the first step black people need to make in order to make it in America. So he was kind of, I don't know if you want to say an Uncle Tom, or if you would say the first inevitable step for black progress, but we also could see just really with white progress that if you come from nothing and you came from being enslaved, and then you said, here, you're a free person now, then what are your next steps? And it seems like that would make sense, that you would have to make a living, you'd have to work, you'd have to get a job, so you'd have to build up trades. And Mortimer Adler doesn't take any type of he doesn't give a shit about vocation. He doesn't give a shit. He cares only about the classics. These goddamn old ass fucking white men, that died in Rome. If Rome was so good, I mean, the fucking Germans fucking killed the Romans. They took the Roman Empire down, the Germans did. So, they were the savages that the Roman Empire could not defeat. They go hard, right? The Teutonic Knights, the Teutonic Order, the Huns. But the Roman Empire, if they did it so great and were so wonderful, where are they at now? They failed. They overextended themselves. They did a whole bunch of things where they fucked themselves over. And we could learn from Rome. We could learn from its mistakes. It is not something we want to emulate. Civilizations, especially empires, come and go. And we've only been a civilization for 220 something years. So to assume that we could not, meet the same fate as other empires and civilizations would be naive. Anyways, so, all mediums are packages of ideas. They're all books to me. Okay, and here we go. So this whole list is basically a kicking in fucking Mortimer Adler's nuts, but I didn't want to just focus on being an asshole to him. I wanted to actually build a list that would also have many ideas that would live on like the authentic, the real list, which I'll talk to you about a little bit in a second. Okay, so here's the books. Here we go. Let's see, we're only 23 minutes in, and now I'm finally talking about what I started out to talk about. Eventually, when I put this online, there's going to be a picture of Aliyah Al-Mahdi. And Aliyah Al-Mahdi is a naked woman who's got Sharia is not a constitution written on her body. She's an Egyptian activist. She got arrested and kidnapped for posting naked pictures in Egypt. And then eventually she exiled to Europe. And then Femin found her. And then Ina Shevchenko and Aliyah Al-Mahdi posed naked. Aliyah Al-Mahdi is a very beautiful woman. She's also an activist, so she has turned the female body into a conversation piece. It is now part of the dialogue. It's part of the national dialogue. There's so much conversation about, contraceptions and abortion. It's all about control over the female body. What is it with the female body? It's a beautiful, it's beautifully constructed. So there should be no problem. But in some cultures, you got to cover every portion, even your ankles, right? You got to cover every bit of it. And it comes from sort of cave days when you had to make sure that your woman actually had your kid, so you had to control her entire, her entire behavior. But female is free, woman is free. Feminism has succeeded. So welcome to America, woman. You're a part of it. You done your. Whatever. I don't give a shit. The point being is that the woman's body is now a part of the conversation. I put it on number one because to me that symbolizes life. What is the greatest work ever created? It is life. Why do we have consciousness? Why are we aware? How come we can think? How come we have life? Where did it come from? Who made it? Did God make it? Of course he didn't. But is there a great intelligent design? I believe Einstein believed that there was some order and that mathematics and science could figure it all out. And, some things are fucking incredible. When you see the Pythagorean theorem, why does one side of a triangle squared added with the other side of the triangle squared equal to the hypotenuse squared? It makes no sense, but it works out that way. And so that's a sort of a geometrical, mathematical certainty that will always match up that way. There's lots of patterns we see, lots of swirls, Fibonacci sequences. So we see lots of different things in lots of patterns and mathematical equations in the entire in our realities. In fact, I think the chaos theory. I don't know. I think I messed this up before, but a type of chaos theory, a theory I may have come up with, was that the idea that all of reality could be figured out through math and science. So we can figure out what everybody's going to do, how everybody's going to react, what are the range of options. There's game theory, which is actually getting closer to that. So you could say, well, if man goes to the store, will he A, get to the store, buy his snack and come back? Will he B, get into a wreck and have to go to the hospital and never get his snack? Or C, get beat up by the LMPD just because he wanted to go to the store and get a fucking snack? A, B, or C, and so you have a range of options. Most of the time, 90% for A, right? Maybe 14% for B, and only 1% for C, and fucking LMPD. So, anyways, that would be a game theory. If I go to the store, what will happen? Most likely, I'll get my snack and come back. No big deal. So we can, there's mathematical ranges and possibilities that people can do to figure out what are the most likely behaviors. What is the most maybe we can't figure out to the T every little known detail, but we can find out a whole shit ton, right? So, gravity, every action, there's opposite and equal reaction. Time is relative. Time and space, there's energy and mass has a relationship. E equals mc squared. There's a Higgs boson, right? There's a God particle that makes up everything around us. And if you could heat up a Higgs boson to like a whole bunch of electricity, it would somehow take over the world or some shit, or fucking destroy us all. So the God particle is a big ass fucking find, and I'm not 100% what that even actually means. So number one is life, and for me, a woman is beautiful, and therefore she symbolizes life. To me, as a man who wants to love a woman, also just she is the giver of life. Traditional means, right? Until we start cloning and start doing more, making test tube babies. That's the traditional way of getting life, and that's wonderful. It's beautiful. I think it's a great thing. We should have a matriarchal bonobo-like society where the women are happy and comfortable and make their own choices and aren't scared, raising their babies together, and they create a more equitable, fair, and just system. So, go woman, I hear you roar. Okay. And that had a whole coloring on my entire list. By naming Aaliyah Almaty, the greatest book. She's the greatest book. And so, sometimes I did add like Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre and some of these other sort of novels where people argue about which man is best, okay? So I think we can learn more about ourselves, right? If we learn more about what women are thinking, then we can become the better men for what women want, and vice versa. And I think we could, we can make a stronger man and stronger woman in our, in our course of doing so. Now, even though I included them, I didn't actually read them, so I don't know how good or not good they are. They're novels. I tried to actually not defend novels, but there are some novels I couldn't get away from, such as Trina Paula, Hope for the Flowers. Hope for the Flowers is a quick-ass read. I got a PDF right there. You can click on the PDF and you'd be finished with reading it in less than an hour. It's got lots of pictures, doesn't have many words. You'll fly through it. It's a great book. It's hope. It's inspiring. And that's really what I wanted this list to be. That was my main focus, for it to be optimistic, for it to offer hope, but also to have a realistic factor at the same time. So I want people to read this. I want people to discuss this, and I hope we have a better conversation instead of just one man. But this is also a good testament to the individual. Look what one man can accomplish, for a couple days, just compiling all the ideas that he believed to be the best ones. Now, there's going to be a better discussion, hopefully next year, and I actually believe that instead of sort of trying to appeal to the masses, I'll just appeal to only my own senses, what I believe to be the cornerstones, and it'll also give me more time to read more of the scientific novels that have moved us along. I kept on wanting to get Euclid Elements. I want to put it number 1, but I've never read Euclid Elements. But I put it at number 6, and when I think about all these things, they're all elements, right? They're all elements to culture that we create. Euclid Elements is where the basic mathematical foundations all stem from. And he, I think, compiled from lots of different sources and made a math textbook. And so, where we get basic algebra, I think it's all from Euclid, and basic geometry and the math equations. Not being 100% sure, I couldn't, I don't know. I would like to think, I'm going to read it more and I'm going to get into it more. And so, this list is also for me to read later. This is what I said was, everybody should have a basis in these 134 books. This is the basic, framework that this is the senior class saying to the kindergartners that eventually you're going to need to read all these books so you can have a good foundation and firm understanding of the America that you live in. And so that's what it symbolizes. But it's essentially just me and my ideas, what I want to give to the next generation. And it's also starting the conversation. It's starting this conversation that I want the Freedom School to have. Which currently there is nobody in, there's no membership. It's just, in fact, almost I've justified everybody's a part of Freedom School. If you're doing your own thing, learning your own ways, you've been a member of Freedom School the whole time. You just didn't know it, okay? Because that's essentially what the Freedom School is about anyways. But I would like to be more of a structure and more, hopefully get like 100 students or so. And be able to actually, do something here. We can make stronger children. It's easier to make stronger children to fix broken men. And that's a Frederick Douglass quote. And that's another thing I piss on Mortimer Adler because he forgot, all the black and red and yellow people. He forgot equality, and his greatest ideas, he was talking about how love and beauty and good and evil and the people who could discuss those ideas and where those ideas came from. That was the basis of what he was doing, but he forgot to mention equality. And I think he mentioned revolution and evolution and solidarity, but I'm not for sure. I know he definitely didn't mention permaculture. So, and what about the internet? Did he even know about the internet? I mean, he just died a couple years ago, but he was pretty old. He was from a different generation. And he loved his master, right? His master taught him all these Roman authors, and he just wanted to. So whereas my list is biased, clearly biased, in favor of, liberation of oppressed peoples, in favor of learning of scientific knowledge, in favor of useful inventions, so I am biased and I revel in it, but he ignores his bias and pretends that his personality had nothing to do with his list and his compilation of the great books. He thinks he objectively and categorically, imperatively found the greatest fucking ideas. He says, fuck the contemporary bullshit, fuck the vocational learning, fuck the center child curriculum of like Montessori and Reggio Emilia, where they're centered, the student-centered curriculum where they get to decide their own fates. He said, fuck all that. Let's go back to Latin, learning the way of the nuns, them forcing their fucking ideas into our brains. Let's go back to that type of shit. So he's definitely old school, and old school is dumb school, because if you ignore the my God, the leaps and bounds, I'm going to actually quote myself, to ignore the leaps and bounds we've advanced in the fields of technology and science is to forever play patty cake to the cave people of yesteryear. And so if we want to advance and know what's going on and to be fully aware and to be able to even advance farther, we've got to be educated, and we can educate ourselves with the internet. Come on, people, let's learn. Let's get to learning. But that's absolutely true. We're going to be a culture that died of ignorance, and we have all the fucking information at our fingertips. Pull your fucking head out of your asses. There's so much shit you could do with the internet, and it's a Gutenberg printing press revolution. So, with all kinds of culture things which pleases the eye, such as movies and other four senses not in the imagination, right? Your hearing, your taste, your touch, and your smell, and your sight. Movies can give you, things there's things that I've seen that you could not have written down. Okay, there are things that I have seen that you could not have written down and would have not have adequately described the experience of a movie. The same thing with the ideas. It's a transmission of ideas, but it's the idea in English form. So therefore, it's limited to only, the bounds of English. But in a movie, you can see a thing happen. You can see a person, do whatever, put brake lines in. And from there, you can, vicariously lose yourself, see what they're doing, learn what they're doing, teach yourself, educate yourself. We got the power to educate ourselves. But we can learn, not just through reading, but we can learn in many different ways. Especially vocation. Some people would even say vocation is the only type of education. What the fuck? You want to learn, how to build a house, or you just want to learn how to fucking dream and think about shit? And that's actual debate, like between Du Bois and Booker T. You want to actually do something with the shit that you're learning? You want it to actually apply your so-called education? Or you just want to be like, hey man, peace, love, and let's just think about stuff and just, hug and dance, man. I'm not for sure what the answer is to that, even though I'm clearly making fun of one way over the other. So, Alia Al-Mahdi, Womankind. You're my number one book. Trina Paula, Hope for the Flowers. I'm just going to actually read them down and say a little line about each one. How about that? Trina Paula, Hope for the Flowers. A story, a short little read, a short little novelette that you can read. And you read it quick. Is that right? A novelle? A novelette. So it's a little tiny novel that you can read. It's about love. It's about revolution. It's about life. It's a good read, good quick read. So, and it's one of the greatest works ever created. So, congratulations, Trina Paula. You're number 2 on my list. Ayn Rand, The Fountainhead, talks about the greatness of humankind, being strong, being all that we can be. Very Nietzschean. Ayn Rand's also sort of the poster girl of the libertarians, even though many of the libertarians and her are at odds with. She's an atheist, right? So the right isn't all Christians. But she was an atheist. But Ayn Rand, The Fountainhead, it's absolutely, read the book. If you haven't read the fucking book, then you're not a man. If you want to become a real man, read The Fountainhead. Only real men read The Fountainhead. And anybody can be inspired. You could be a sort of really selfish, greedy dickhead after reading it, or you could just strengthen, your resolve and be for the masses. You can read and be inspired by these works however you want to be inspired. Hope for the Flowers is definitely about revolution, and it's about love, and it's about life. And capitalism. There's so many great ideas that just packed in this one little book, and it's a picture book. If you like watching pictures, pick up Trina Paula, Hope for the Flowers. Why would you not? It is a good book. I don't know if it's as good as a scientific treatise, say like the theory of general relativity. That probably should be number 2. And number 1 should be Euclid, The Elements. But, we'll go with Hope for the Flowers for now. Number 2. Number 3, Ayn Rand. Number 4, director Ava DuVernay and writer Paula Webb. Selma, a movie. And here's another sort of kicking my own parameters, right? The Selma, the movie, is about MLK. He goes to LBJ, says, hey, we need freedom. LBJ's like, I got shit to worry about. So he goes, all right, fuck it. We're going to go to Selma. And then you see the cops beating the shit out of all these poor black folks just for walking, just for having a march across the bridge. We're going to, cross the divide between white and black. We're going to walk across this bridge that supposedly we're not allowed to cross over. And then they got their asses kicked and made LBJ look stupid. So it's going to put MLK on the map. MLK Day, I think, is actually on the same day. So MLK wasn't just a passive nonviolent type. He was a revolutionary, in-your-face nonviolent type. He was going to put the issue right in your face. He wasn't going to be violent about it. He was a nonviolent activist for direct action. Nonviolent direct action activist. So MLK is a badass. He's an absolute badass, and we're going to see the human side of him because of this movie, which is going to be incredible. but just the movie, a documentary movie of his life, is incredible. We don't need a Hollywoodized movie, but the fact that Hollywood has taken on MLK, I believe the reason why I added a movie into it is because there are things that you can see that you cannot, read about. I know about MLK. I've heard discussions, but when you see him on the big screen, it's going to be hard to think of MLK in any other way. It's kind of like JFK or Citizen Kane. You can read all that you can about, Randolph Hearst, William Randolph Hearst. Read all that you can. Look at his picture. He was the great American. He had Xanadu. He was a rich man. Thought that anybody could do what he was doing. But as soon as you watch Citizen Kane, you'll forever think of William Randolph Hearst as, the character that Orson Welles had played. And, going down the list, JFK, his head being shot back into the left. When you see a thing on TV, there's, that vision, that action, that idea is not something, I guess you could write it down as something that's different. You can, begin to sort of qualify what it is I'm saying, because I know what I'm saying is really vague. But basically, it's just a question of, do we see images or do we see words in our brain? And which one of those ways of thinking is more lasting, has more retention, is more powerful? I believe we have both of those types of thinking. We see in pictures, we see in words, we see in the abstract, we see in the concrete. So there's many ways that we view things. So that's why I included the movie, because I think MLK is going to be made to live and be real life. I'm predicting this. I'm putting something contemporary in because I believe that the movie Selma will have some great ideas and lasting cultural value in America. So I'm banking on it, but I heard it was good. I liked the trailer, so it seems to me that it's probably going to be a kick-ass movie. And you will see MLK in a different light. It's an actor playing it, and it's dramatized, but it's going to be a better little short story for the masses, right? To actually read about everything MLK did is so much harder to do and understand. Why don't we just watch the movie? And now I know. Well, you kind of know, but that you got a better understanding. So Selma, number 4. So then let's just sort of round out the bottom. So Adolf Hitler, Mein Kampf, Euclid Elements, Robert Greene, 48 Laws of Power, Stephen Hawking, A Brief History of Time, Noam Chomsky, 9/11, George Orwell, 1984, Howard Zinn, The People's History of the United States, Albert Einstein, Relativity, the Special and General Theory, Eugene Debs, The Anti-War Speech that sent Eugene to prison for 12 years, Marxist, Archive Dev Works, Canton, 1918. Okay, so Adolf Hitler. I'm not bragging. This is not a celebration of Adolf Hitler. This is a warning. This is this is a psychopath writing a goddamn book, getting to the mind of a psycho, and he actually very logically writes his fucking thoughts out, right? People say he's a smart guy. Oh man, that Hitler's a smart guy. He killed a lot of fucking people and got a lot of dumb fucks to follow him. If that's intelligent, all right, yeah, maybe, but it's also really fucking evil, right? So he's an evil fucking prick. He's an aberration of history, or he hopefully is an aberration, and we should make sure any fascist, totalitarian sons of bitches are forever fucking quashed. We should learn every which way. We should know thy enemy. We should know every which way that Adolf Hitler had lived, how he behaved, how he had acted, what created him, what made him, and what conditions saw about his rise. And so we could predict and stop that type of situation from ever happening again. We stopped Adolf Hitler. The Nazis were bad. Now, why did we stop them? Because they were bad, or because we wanted the empire and they was going to get the empire first? What are the similarities between our nation and 1930s Nazi Germany? Is there any? I bet you there might be. And Mein Kampf also talks about how to manipulate people. It's about the power of propaganda, about the power of the spoken word. That's how people can manipulate. Some people say, oh, I don't ever type nothing. I just like to yell at people. That's how I get things done. Well, not everybody likes to be fucking yelled at. Maybe a nice little fucking letter might be a little bit easier. And plus, when you write things down, it's got the added benefit of being permanent forever. So you got, documentation. Here's the thing. There it is. Peace out. Whereas verbal, you don't know what the fuck happened. Well, you're just stupid. No, you're stupid. No, you're stupid. No, you're stupid. Hey, stupid. No, what? You stutter. Shut up. Shut up. You shut up. I don't know what good that'll be. With the conversation, you just online, you type, wait for an answer, type, get an answer back. Simple, easy. They responded when they wanted to. You had a question, you got your question resolved. You know, shit's done. It's fucking done. It's done. It's done. So I'm just saying, whereas, of course, the spoken word has its value, I am skeptical of people who speak out loud, because I think they're trying to manipulate me. All their fucking words and all their bullshit is just so that eventually one day they can say, hey, you do that. No, you go do that. No, you go do this. No, you got a will to power. Recognize it. Learn some Nietzsche. Okay. So Adolf Hitler, Mein Kampf, read it. That's required reading. If you want to understand the world that you're in, the political situation, I oscillated between rising the scientific community as high as I could on the great books list, but the political situation has to be peaceful so that we could have a renaissance and an enlightenment period. These are smart, these are good things. Enlightenment, that means you were enlightened, you were intelligent, and you thought about things. That's good. That's where America needs to be. Self-reflective. See what we're doing. Do we want to go this direction? Left, right, center? Which way are we going? Do we know what we're talking about? You need to pay attention. More than anything, America needs the truth. And we need to listen to the truth speakers. Because if we keep on putting our heads in the sand, we're just going to see a continuation of the same bullshit policies that about blew up the world in 2008. That's still imperializing, bombing innocent children with now drone strikes. Imagine. No, not being just, afraid of this and that, but fucking airplanes gonna fucking bomb. That would be scary as fuck. So we need the peace. And not just a Pax Americana where the fear of the grave or by the slave. We genuine peace. That's what we need. Because that's the way we can maximize our freedom, is with pure, genuine peace. And have a flourishing of culture, a renaissance, and enlightenment. And have better conversations and do things different. It doesn't mean, it can mean anything, right? It can mean anything. It can be revolution. It can mean reform. But to assume that what you've been doing the whole time is absolutely right, you're absolutely certain about every goddamn thing, and there's no way that you'd ever be wrong, fuck you. You're fucking stupid as shit, and if you're the ones that's fucking steering the goddamn boat, you need to take a step back and sit on a chair and just think, what if you're wrong? What if you don't know what the fuck you're talking about and you're just full of fucking shit? What if you're just full of a bunch of fucking bullshit and you've been manipulating and yelling at only the people that love you enough to listen to your fucking bullshit? I don't want somebody that's going to hurt their own. I want somebody that can speak up to a goddamn evil fucking strange bastard as much as they can fucking say, shit to their own. Until then, being your friend just means it's oppression. And sometimes friendship and relationship, they're more tyrannical than a boss or a fucking enemy could be. So watch out for tyrants of all kinds, your friends and your enemies. You never know where tyranny will strike. One of my favorite, proudest moments of making this list, I basically cut out most of the Roman and Greek authors just off the hand. I was like, God, I could read all these and try to find out if there's any value. I read Aeschylus. I like that quote that MLK or that RFK said when MLK got shot. But Aeschylus was he wrote a bunch of plays and shit. I got real bored. I said, I don't know. I've read plays before. I'm done. and I don't know if there's any redeemable quality in Aeschylus besides that one quote. And I read a couple other quotes of him too. So I cut out most of the Romans and the Greeks. And I also cut out Machiavelli. I cut out The Prince, and I'll tell you why. The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, he covers Machiavelli. He covers Sun Tzu. He covers lots of shit. The 48 Laws of Power for a book is one of the greatest books I've ever read. One of the greatest books ever constructed. It's very readable. It'll have a common history, has a common goal, a common idea. Essentially, Machiavelli says it doesn't matter about the morality. It only matters about power. You keep power. You get power for power's sake. Those who don't have power try to get power. Those who got power try to keep it. Keep everybody else from having. So, and there's 48 laws. He's made it very simple, very readable, lots of parables. And it's an incredible fucking book as a book. And it probably has a shit ton of fucking original ideas. There's 48 ideas. And I think I probably have been living the 48 Laws of Power ever since 2001, ever since I went to fucking Xavier University. 48 Laws of Power. It's Machiavelli and Sun Tzu on crack. It's like, it encompasses so much shit. And I think it also talks about the Chinese civilization and other different examples that, Americans may not be familiar with. So it gives a sort of common humanist history of the world. You know, we're talking about, you know, the Chinese Revolution and Shang and I don't know. There's a whole Otto von Bismarck. Just so many references. I mean, it's just a badass book. It's a badass book. I would love to, you know, to have conversations about the 48 Laws of Power. I could talk about the 48 Laws of Power till I was blue in the face. I talk about each and every law. It's all chock full of examples for each and every law. And some of the laws are contradicting, you know, and you got to, you know, you got must make a means. I also heard that the Machiavelli was really just Stephen Colbert, so he was just basically bullshitting, telling Borgia to be this evil fucking vindictive asshole just to trick him, so that way he'll be, you know, he'll go down. But I think most people, this is also the cornerstone to political science. Power is good. You get power for power's sake. Fuck all else. It's also Nietzscheism. It's a lot of things. It's Rules for Radicals. It's Saul Alinsky. It's Frederick Douglass. I've been questioning power for a long ass time. I mean, Nietzsche makes a ton of sense to me. Nietzsche says the Christian mentality is a slave mentality, and humans are not like that. You know, we need some type of fucking delusion to turn ourselves off if we don't really want to be our normal selves. But our normal selves is our will to power selves. We all want power. We all want to dominate over others. And if we want equality, then we got to be around people who aren't going to try to sort of manipulate us and be a bunch of shitty fucking fascists manipulating, controlling fucking assholes. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? I want to put the People's History up there because it's towards the Americans. I used to say it was like my Bible, but evidently my Bible is Aaliyah Almaty. She's my #1 book. And that's a great kick in my own fucking nuts, right? Hey, let's make that great works. Well, let's make a woman. Well, that might be God. Well, no, not really. But it just, you know, how we got here, life itself is a wonderful work. Who or what or how it happened is just, you know, I don't know if we'll ever answer that question, but it's definitely something to think about and consider. Stephen Hawking, A Brief History of Time. You know, I'm excited about that. I almost want to put that as #1 or 2, because I think that's going to be a greatest works of all time. A Brief History of Time. He's contemporary. A Brief History of Time. He's written a ton of fucking books, actually, so we might see more of Stephen Hawking. He's like the leading astrophysicist, and he's nothing but a brain, and that should actually inspire all people. So no matter how bad you get, you know, lose a limb, lose a kidney, whatever, you know, ordeal you go through, if you have something more than just a brain, you're doing better than Stephen Hawking. So Stephen Hawking is able to, you know, use just his consciousness to be able to do the things that he does. So if you got consciousness, you can do stuff. So, you know, don't give up. Don't lose hope. Plus, the Brief History of Time. I mean, there's actually, I would love to, I've read briefly. I skimmed through it. There's some equations, E equals MC squared, and I think it's a good understanding of time. Like, is time constant? But Einstein says it's relative, time and space, continuum, and you know, energy, mass, man. What does it all mean? I don't know. Let's just be relative. But then he's also the one that says God don't play dice when it comes to what is that? What is that shit they talking about? Quantum physics. So he kind of pissed all over quantum physics, saying God doesn't play dice because he thinks there is an order to the system which can be discovered with math and engineering and geometry and science and logic and reason. We can find what the order of this universe is. Science is good because even if you don't believe it, it's still true. Even if you take all the scientific progress that we've made up till today and we just started rediscovering things, we'd eventually come up with the same fucking scientific principles that had already been came up. Just maybe longer and in different symbols and shit. Maybe in, you know, in Spanish instead of Latin or Arabic. Which I think our number system is in Arabic. Also, the great thing about science. Anyways, wait, there was another thing. Another great thing about science is, I don't know. I like the idea that science knowledge compounds. I thought of a line while I was saying that other quote, but I forgot it now. Science is true even if you used to delete everything. Oh yeah, the greatest thing Neil deGrasse Tyson said about science and what he learned about the universe is essentially that the Big Bang happened and it just was made up of nitrogen, oxygen, very basic elements. And it's the same elements that make up humans and make up life and make up the earth and make up plants, animals, and everything else we see here. And so essentially we are made with the same stuff that the stars are made of. Humans, me, you, we're made of star stuff. And when you think of that, of the world like that, that's pretty exciting. It means we are all connected. There is a sense of oneness. I got spirituality. That's what it feels to me, that we are all one. There's one energy. And actually Einstein with his E equals MC squared says that is true. Because if energy cannot be destroyed and matter cannot be destroyed, they just transfer into each other. So there's always an energy transfer. It's created into matter. Matter, if it looks like it's destroyed, was created into energy. And that even gives explanation for when we die. Where does the energy and where does the consciousness? Does it die too? Probably. But the energy goes somewhere. Where does that energy go? So in some sense, there is an afterlife, even if it's not in the sense of God and the angels in heaven. When we die, at the very least, we're fertilizer, right? And hopefully, maybe there's more to it than that, but that's as far as I got to. So that's the afterlife. Be happy. You'll be fertilizer for the grass and the trees. Circle of Life. Mufasa taught me that. It's Lion King. Disney. Check it out. There's actually a lot of good lessons in Mufasa and the Lion King about love, revenge, unity, warfare, redemption, liberation. So Noam Chomsky, 9/11. This book hit the #1 bestseller on the New York Times list right after 9/11 happened. Noam Chomsky's been doing his thing. He's an intellectual. Wish he'd do more than just being an intellectual. But we all need the theory and we need the intellectuals. His book on 9/11, it's exactly how I think about 9/11 today. I was reading him at the time. It very much feels expected. If you know anything about American foreign policy, we've been bombing and killing for a long ass fucking time, and so it's actually shocking that we haven't been attacked. Any especially since we started wars of aggression and imperialism in 2003. So 9/11, it happened 14 years ago. It was our generation's JFK. Everybody knows where they were at when JFK got shot. And everybody knows where they were at when 9/11 happened. It was a shock to everybody. But the people who was reading Chomsky, right? And so my understanding of terrorism comes directly from him and my understanding of the world. He was absolutely right. He told us the truth, and he's always been telling us the truth. He's got so many books out there. 9/11 is the tip of the iceberg. In fact, just read Chomsky if you want really any advice. Of course, you should read what the other books I've gotten up here, but Chomsky tells you the truth. He writes on education. He writes on love and other things about society and American history. He's known as a linguistics expert. He works at MIT and he does like the Chomskyan revolution, something to do with language. He believes that children creatively speak language, so they're not just imitating, and that's created a Chomskyan revolution when it comes to linguistic thought. He also hates B.F. Skinner as much as I hate that fucking piece of shit. So check out Noam Chomsky. Then George Orwell, 1984, classic. It's a classic. So actually, if I was to, I don't know, I feel like I'm not going to change it now because the whole thing is the way I made it, and that's the way I'm going to keep it. But if I was just to put science and cut out the politics, I would put Elements first, A Brief History of Time, 1984. That would have been my first three. Chomsky is pretty good. 9/11, it just, I think people need to understand 9/11, what actually happened there. One of the biggest, most controversial things he said was that 9/11 was a tragedy, right? It was tragedy. 3,000 people had died. But it wasn't as bad as a tragedy when Bill Clinton bombed Sudan and 20,000 people died. He bombed Sudan. Supposedly it was supposed to be an aspirin factory, but it was a pharmaceutical factory that offered lots of medicines. So there's the people that, was killed in the initial bombing of that factory, but then all the residual people that had died from it too, who needed that, life-saving medicine. 20,000 people died. because Bill Clinton bombed Sudan. What the fuck was Sudan doing to us? Were they posing a threat? We just being an imperialistic fucking empire? They killed, 6 times as many people we did. Our government killed 6 times as many people in Sudan than what Al Qaeda supposedly had killed in New York on September 11th. That's remarkable. You want to sit there and say one terrorism is better than the other? Well, one terrorism is actually better than the other. The one that kills less is better, right? So the terrorism that the America puts out is worse in terms of body count and deaths. So big shocker that we've been killing people and eventually one of them killed us back. It's not a shocker at all. 1984, it's just a classic novel. Not only is it a good novel, talks about love. The thoughts of love is really good in George Orwell, but it also talks about how language can be used to manipulate. So the Ministry of Peace is actually a war society, like the Defense Department. We got the Patriot Act, we got Clear Skies, Clean Water Act, which is actually to lower regulations and increase emissions. So it actually makes for dirtier skies and dirty water. And then we also have the Unpatriot Act, which is increasing spying and government powers into our lives and decreasing our freedoms and decreasing our liberties. If you're a true patriot, you love your freedom, you love your liberty, you don't sell it out for nothing. And so it just goes on, with the Orwellian language. And it's a classic novel. It reads okay as a decent novel. It's a good story. Talks about love, so there's other ideas that comes out of it, but essentially it's the power that language and government, increasingly government uses language to obfuscate the truth. They'll say more general fucking things just to the pacification of a people, what could be a great slaughter where soldiers went in and just murdered with glee and killed as many people, sort of like they did with that mercenary group, Blackwater. So Blackwater just went in, killed with glee, and didn't give a shit. And that was pacification. They were doing their job, right? So who gives a fuck? No, it's not pacification. It's murdering willy-nilly. It's a fucking psycho. It's a goddamn Jeffrey Dahmer going around having fun, openly killing people. It's a fucking proud Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer, kills one. That's a tragedy. Kill a million. It's a statistic. That's Stalin. That's a Stalin quote. So understand that. Understand the human psyche, Like when you think about 9/11, think about the 3,000 people that had died. They were individuals who had families, who had lives, who did different things. 3,000 individuals. Now think of the 20,000 Sudanese. They were people who had lives and families and, went about their day and tried to live and do their best. The theory of relativity you can't get rid of. The People's History of the United States. That is basically my Bible when it comes to the history of the United States. I don't want to be too... It's also a little bit nationalistic, but that's very perfect actually for my purposes here. The 48 Laws of Power, I think, is more international, more humanistic. Eugene Debs, this is actually a better sort of introduction to the Howard Zinn. This is just to teach us about ourselves. We create our own destinies from the bottom up, and we look at the good examples of people who have succeeded and done well. My Cracked.com article was about people who have succeeded and done well. That's what Howard Zinn says the point of history is. So he spoke from history from the bottom up instead of from the top down, not from the elites on down, but from us up. And so therefore, the anti-war speech that sent Eugene Debs to prison for 10 years, he spoke against World War I. And they fought, just because he didn't say, he couched it in between, oh, I love my country, God bless America. He told the truth. This is war. It's bullshit. The master class versus the slave class. They'll send you to die while they profit. They've all been doing it since time immemorial. I'm against this war and I think it's wrong. Bam, you're in prison for 10 fucking years. He got 1 million votes while he was sitting in jail. 1 million votes. He's a socialist. He was the one that led the Pullman strike. He helped with the railroad strike. He was a great union organizer for a long ass time. And they put him in prison just because he talked out against World War I. That would be Woodrow fucking Wilson, the racist fucking white supremacist piece of shit that is known as Woodrow Wilson, that imperialistic bastard. This is right at the turn of the century. We just became imperialistic in 1898, the Spanish-American War. This is Eugene Debs. This is the Gilded Age. This is when Americans were Americans. This is when Americans acted like Americans. They saw change coming. They didn't like it. It changed the way they lived. It changed their traditions. It changed their honor. It changed their dignity. And they said, God damn it, we're fucking men. We're women. And we're not going to take this bullshit. Why do I know that? People's History of the United States. There should be required reading in all schools all across America. Required reading. Yeah, there's the great Lincolns and the great Calvin Coolidges and what the fuck evers. But the history is not written by just the leaders or the main figures. It's written by all of us. What we hold on to, what we hold dear, how we interpret these events. So, people's history. Relativity, keep the idea. Eugene Debs, he goes to jail just for speaking. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Emile, he writes this book and he's on the run. He's got to run around everywhere. United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. This encompasses all rights that all humans should have. So it expands our Bill of Rights. It says that we have a right to unionize and we have other rights. Che Guevara, episodes of the Cuban Revolutionary War. I had referenced this in the beginning. I am not a liberator. Liberators do not exist. The people liberate themselves. And that was a statement he made in Mexico in 1958 as quoted in Kaplan AP World History 2005, edited by the Kaplan staff, page 240. So I'm not sure where he said it or why he said it. Maybe just to a reporter in passing or some shit. Charles Darwin, he's a racist. He's a racist piece of shit. You didn't know that either. On the origins of species by means of natural selection or the preservation of favored races. All right, he writes it with that British O-U-R. Favor the races. And the struggle. Could have a sporty. No, the queen. In the struggle for life. Coolio, Gangsta's Paradise. There's not a better sound. As soon as that. And believe me, that is Gangsta's Paradise. I did not mess that. I'm talking about the tune in the very beginning, the instrumental part, and then him, and then them singing. Been spending most of lives living in a gangster's paradise. Power in the money, money in the power, minute after minute, hour after hour. How can you teach me when you can't even reach me? So Isaac Newton, Adam Smith, the Pluto Files, all these are scientific treatises. Move all these up. Move them up, move them up, move them up. Kentucky, the Kentucky Constitution. This is the consolidation of the revolution. Happened in 1891. It's a good document. You should read it, especially if you're a Kentuckian. That's the rules that govern you. You don't even know the rules that govern you? What governs you? You ducking? Whatever you can get away with? John Maynard Keynes, The General Theory of Employment, Interest, and Money. It's sort of the not laissez-faire guy. He says that governments can inject a stimulus into the economy and get it working. Johann Most, The Science of Revolutionary Warfare. Johann Most, he's my favorite German revolutionary. He's an anarchist. Funny guy. Used to date Emma Goldman and pissed her off by criticizing the guy who tried to assassinate Henry Frick. The Pullman fucking police, the Pinkertons. William Styron, The Confessions of Nat Turner. So there's a big slap in the face. Mortimer. I fucking mentioned Nat Turner. What the fuck you think now, motherfucker? Nietzsche. There's plenty of works. I just mentioned The Gay Science. It was his most personal book. Thomas Paine, Rights of Man. Solidarity, where'd that word come from? Integrated circuit, talk about solidarity. Integrated circuit's very good solidarity. Thomas Paine again, The Age of Reason, to learn how the power of rational thought is the primary source of freedom in the world. It's by Neil deGrasse Tyson. Isaac Newton, Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica. Michael Faraday, The Chemical History of a Candle. Don't even tell me you don't know about the chemical history of a candle. What kind of educated fucker do you think you are? You don't even know about the chemical history of a fucking candle? So, I went down to 33. That's good enough. I got 100 more. 100 more. Look at all these books. So read up. Read up, drink up all this knowledge. This is for the next generation. And I'll have, you know, my own ideas for the books next year. And I'll hopefully compete with somebody else. I did talk to a few people about these books, but it's essentially my own list. It's the ideas that I think best. So that's an Ayn Rand thing, right? It's going to have the continuity of one major master, one creator that made the whole thing. It's going to have an intelligent design. And it does. There is a method to my madness. There is an intelligent design here. But I hope that the next 100 books, I will just, I guess, just be the books that I would assume if we lived in a peaceful world where there is no threat of violence and people could work and discover as many things as they can work and discover on as was possible. Then I would just put the cornerstones of scientific revolutions. So I think I need to read more scientific manuals to get better understanding of the world that I live in. And by next year, because I've read more of the scientific novels, I put a lot of science in here. So I've started myself out on, you know, many of the cornerstones. I know Einstein changed the game. I know Isaac Newton changed the game. Some of the older ones, you know, I know Da Vinci and Galileo. I know they made some bigger changes, but I wanted to get more contemporary folks because they've considered a lot of these ideas and they've either rejected or not rejected it for whatever reasons. Einstein's opinions, how I see the world, and thoughts and opinions or whatever about things. He's got 2 books where he's just talking about the world. He was a genius. He did change the game. He was that changed the paradigm with Thomas Kuhn's Scientific Revolutions. That was a scientific revolution, and the best thing, actually, when it comes to like a political revolution and a scientific one, scientific revolutions are forever. There's no change in a scientific revolution. Max Planck barely touched on this, but a scientific revolution, it doesn't wait for the opponents to die out. It just is true. Fucking gravity happens. When you pick something up and you drop it and it keeps falling down, that's fucking gravity. It's going to happen probably forever for the rest of our lives. It happened in Isaac Newton's time. It's going to keep on happening. For every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. That's why those 2 balls can bounce against each other forever, right? Boom, 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 boom. And gradually, slowly, right, it gives in. It doesn't have as much, but it's, you know, it's I think you can actually calibrate it to where it always bangs forever, right? Because the force inside of it keeps it going or something. I don't know. But anyways, there's scientific hardcore truths that can never ever be changed. So Newton and Einstein are really important people, but really any type of scientific person out there, Neil deGrasse Tyson, he can hold his own. Stephen Hawkins, and there's probably millions more of scientists that I've never even considered. Because who the fuck do you? I would like to see more scientific debates actually, and fuck debating these religious assholes. Let's debate fucking science with scientific people, and let's have great fucking debates when it comes to science, and be fucking dickheads about our positions of shit, and just say with certainty, this is what I believe. You're absolutely wrong. You know, God doesn't play dice. There's intelligent design. Fuck quantum mechanics. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Your proportion, you think that the electron's going to be there at some time. How do you know? You'd have to make some sort of worldwide hadron collider, some sort of accelerator, particle accelerator or some shit. If you want to find the Higgs boson, the fucking God particle. And we did find the God particle. What does it all mean? I got some understanding. I'm not for sure if you understand it though. Do you know what a Higgs boson is? Do you know what that means for our world? Do you understand it? It creates all matter. The Higgs boson is a part of all of us, and for some reason, it's the most important fucking particle ever. The God particle. That is not an understatement. Stephen Hawking didn't think it was going to exist. Now he believes it exists, and now he's saying, hey, it could kill us all. You know, it's kind of being an asshole about it, but he at least admit that it exists. When at first he was probably its biggest skeptic. So guess what? The Higgs boson is here. Johnny Master's great books. I've talked to top 30. I've mentioned why I was thinking the things I was thinking, why I ranked them in the orders that I did. There's plenty of books there. There's for the next generation. Maybe we'll make a better list. Maybe this list will be the greatest list ever made. I don't know. Hope for the flowers. Optimism. Hope. Realism. Get learnt. Get learnt up, everybody. And rise up. Revolution. Viva la revolution.